Welcome to Flint, Michigan, the home of the In My Opinion show, produced and directed by Ronald Barry Robinson. Welcome to Flint, Michigan, the home and birthplace of General Motors Corporation, who put the world on wheels and introduced the American people to the middle class and boasted the highest income per capita in 1970, from which all Americans benefited, including Black Americans, women, and people of color. I am your host, Henry Hatter. In this episode, would like to accomplish four tasks. First, the presentation inaugurates the first ever reintroduction of the Republican Party to the Black Americans since 1863, following the Emancipation Proclamation. Now, whether you're a Democrat or a Republican or an independent, this presentation is devoted to finding common ground between Black Americans and the Republican Party. Secondly, the discussion between my guest and I should demonstrate to our audience regarding serious problems critical to the survival of life the way we live and love it in the United States, the richest country in the world. Looking back, to join or replace you as we diminish our wealth through incessant spending of $1 trillion per quarter. Something has to give. Well-informed Black Americans will be key to reestablishing respectable spending policies. Thirdly, these discussions should make certain demands upon you, our audience, which prepares us for the next episode to continuous discussion that we may all mutually learn and benefit. Lastly, the dialogue between my guest and I should prompt the audience to the realization that Black Americans acting through a faction could become the margin of victory by moving the needle, as other powerful factions have done so in the past, as labor unions, teachers, UAW-CIO, Teamsters, and farmers. Welcome, Representative Dave Martin. Dave Martin is my guest today. He is well-educated, he's well-informed, and a great representative for his district. Welcome.
Thank you, Henry.
Please introduce yourself and tell us who you are.
So, Representative David Martin, 68th House District, which is Davison, Michigan, my hometown. Burton, most of Grand Blanc, Atlas, and down into Oakland County. I have, when I say my hometown, I graduated from Davison, went in the Air Force for 20 years, retired, came back to my hometown, and then got involved in politics about 10 years after I retired with the city council. Got to know people. They asked me to do some other things. I ran for county commission, served 2 terms there, and then they asked me to run for the House, and I was successful doing that also.
You've been a good person for your district. Now, I have a survey that's come in from people from various walks of life, ages, races, religious affiliations, etc., young and old, of which I will read from this text. Now, Dave, some of these questions may be biting or a little bit strong and may be consequential for you. But I hope, as I know you, you will be able to give questions that people want to hear about. They want to talk about, etc. The first question is from Abigail. From your perspective, why is the country appear to be so divided?
So, and I've stayed out of national politics for all of my races because it doesn't apply. So I see the local differences, and then of course some of the news reports and so forth then bleed into the locals because that's what the conventional wisdom becomes, that it's divided and so forth. There's division for a couple reasons. One of them is just for voting blocks. Whatever you can do to encourage somebody to vote for you because you're doing something for them, then you have to draw a difference between you and the other person or the other party or the other belief. And if you don't show that distinction, then there is no difference. So it's just the corral a voting block, whether it's the NRA getting gun owners or whether it's AARP getting retired persons, and you got to look and make sure that they're actually performing what their goals are and not just using you as a voting block so that they have a voice in Congress or can raise money. So it's not necessarily because America is different. It's just that there's people vying for your dollars and cents.
Well, many people, these young people, fear that they don't have a place in the future because the Americans are spending so much money on themselves that they're not providing for the future. And young people are backing away and not following the Constitution as the older people have done for years. And this is of a concern. Why do you think? Uh, here's the question: why do a particular segment of white American people recoil when they hear the word DEI?
DEI, it comes down to me because we hear this often. It comes down to the definition of equality and the definition of equity. So just because your next door neighbor gets a bicycle on his ninth birthday doesn't mean you get a bicycle on your ninth birthday. Um, but you have the opportunity to get a bicycle. Your parents have the choice of buying something for you for your birthday different than what your neighbor got. Now, equity would say because your neighbor has a bicycle, you get a bicycle. Otherwise, it's going to be unfair. And I think it's those differences and how we approach that that causes, like you say, recoil or whatever from the definitions. So it's not so much the concept that it's the application and the choice of words.
Well, if you saw the news release from the University of Michigan, many Black Americans, kids that go there, they've rejected DEI.
Well, it comes back to affirmative action in their eyes.
Yes,
It's
yes.
like, whatever happened to my merit? Whatever happened to the fact that somebody's recognizing me for what I've done, the content of my character as it goes, versus just the color of their skin? Why am I getting a benefit when I've worked hard and I deserve this, but I feel like I only got this because I'm in a segment that they need to fill out their whatever the federal government gives grants for. Uh,
Americans, and particularly Black Americans, owe the young people, the young Black people, an explanation of they why they don't benefit from DEI, but yet they are promoting it. And yet the young people say, I don't want it. It stigmatizes me.
So what they really need, Brookings Institute did a study a long time ago, and it's just been confirmed, and it still works today. Um, and it doesn't matter which segment of society you come from, but if you graduate from high school or graduate with a degree, whether it's high school, depending on, but if you finish whatever you started, get actual certification, get a job so that you have a career, then get married in that order before you have children. And having children is a big part of that because of being the responsibility of a family is a building loyalty type thing. So if you graduate, get a job, get married before you have children, you have like a 90% chance, well, in the 90s, of being middle class in this country. But if you mix those order up, you don't graduate, you don't get a good job or a full time job, or if you get married or have children outside of marriage, it really messes those odds up. So if I want to go to a casino, I don't go to a casino with those 90% odds. I don't like to go to a casino with anything less than that.
Oh, great. Great response. Now, this is from Betty Joe. Why do words cancel culture and critical race theory irritate some middle class moms more than the population norm?
Well, it may be reported that way, so I don't know if that's true. I don't know the actual statistics. I mean, I'm sure depending on what um, social media, mass media that you look at, it may be described that way. But I would say what moms are looking for their children in school is truth. So when you talk about history, you don't recreate history to your liking. You don't hide anything from history either. You show the truth. you show the corrective actions we've taken and how much better we've improved since then, and how we can do things better in the future. But just to be revisionist history, that's what I think they're concerned about.
Well, and white people, I mean, black people have always wanted to be in the classroom with white children. Since 1863, after the affirmative action, I mean, emancipation, but they have strived all of these years and have been rejected. And now they are considered to be the point of irritation for cancel culture and for that kind of ilk, cancel culture and critical race. Why is that?
So I look back at when the first black representative got in Congress, the first black governor, and these types of things. These things were happening. These things are happening even before the Civil War, where freedom was allowed for all Americans. In the South, obviously, it wasn't, but it was happening after the South was. The slaves were freed. Emancipation Proclamation was announced all the way through Texas. All of us, I don't know if it was a fear because now there's a lot of competition for jobs and land and so forth that wasn't there before, because now everybody had that theoretically the opportunity. So they were just jealous of protecting what little they had instead of giving it to a new population of competition for jobs and for property. I'm not that well versed in it.
Well, Martin Luther King preached the same thing. When all of the kids, little kids, will be able to come together and sit in the same classroom. Even today, kids have abandoned the Flint school system and moved into the communities where they can immerse with kids where they want to be. And the parents have encouraged this. How do you respond to that?
If you ever watch children, whether it's on a little social media stream of some sort, and you see the interaction of different races, Asian, African, Caucasian, Europeans, you see them interact as children. They're just children. There's no difference between them.
Yes.
So there's got to be something that comes up later in life that kind of directs them that I look at elections. When they say, if you don't vote for a certain person, a black person, then you're not black. I mean, that's ridiculous. So I don't have somebody come up to me and say, you have to vote for a certain person because you're white. And nobody even says that. And it just bothered me because I look at some of the people I've supported in the past, Dr. Ben Carson, different people like that are outstanding candidates. And it's like, why can I? Nobody would ever tell me that I can't vote for Ben Carson because I'm white.
I know. That was a bad statement by former President Obama and Biden when they mentioned those kind of issues. They hurt the culture of people who's trying to bring this thing to a conclusion.
So where it goes from children playing together in a church nursery to being divisive, there's got to be an interaction somewhere where they're kind of taught, a culture. I'm not exactly sure where that actually happens, or if it's because of a segregated school type thing.
Sure.
Because maybe at church they're from across the more of the community, but at elementary school because they're inner city, they're not as integrated. I don't know where it happens.
Okay, I got to move on. We got lots of questions to get to. Now, this one is from John, and John might be sneaky here. What is the role of a state representative, and how do they carry out their role?
So we're as a representative government. Not everybody in a democracy gets a chance to vote like a true democracy should be. Otherwise, you'd be waiting forever for 10 million people to cast their vote. So we elect representatives that we feel that have been elected because they reflect the viewpoint of most of the community for that district that they're representing. Then they go to Lansing or go to Washington and vote those types of values and virtues based on what they campaigned on. And so we got to, and we sit in the committee so you don't have to. And
Okay, now here's a follow-up question by the same person. If state representatives represent the interests of people who live in their own districts, how then do they find the sensitivity and compassion to support those whose issues fall through the cracks and who don't look like them and don't have the same kind of money?
so, and of course, the Independent Reconditioning Commission was supposed to make these districts communities of interest, so that you represented it more of something that was a community of interest. People had common values. I'm not sure that worked out so well. Uh, but I can tell you, as far as my office and a lot of people I work with, and a lot of people that have mentored me, because in the short term, you got to climb the ladder rapidly. You got a lot to learn in a short period of time. And I find out that my office hours, having office hours twice a month in the 2 locations in the district, people come, it's open. Anybody that writes the office, you email, whatever, you're going to get a response. You call the office. I don't care if it's a form letter or if you personally contact us. We will respond to anything. If you have a problem with the state, unemployment, getting a liquor license as a business, anything like that, we will interact with you. We don't ask you, what party are you in? Did you vote for me? We just do it.
And that means that all state representatives, the 30, 83, is it?
It's 110 representatives and 38 senators.
The question is, all of them have an obligation to represent all of the people, irrespective of where they live, right?
Correct.
They have some obligation to that. And this is what this question is intended to elucidate.
So here's also, you have to have a philosophy. So I know that in a republic representative government, that the majority has a responsibility to protect the minority. So it's a pure democracy. It'd be a tyranny of the majority. Whatever the masses want, the masses get. But what about the minorities? What about the underserved? So as a representative government, if you have to have a philosophy and a service outlook to make sure that you take care of the minority also. I look at some of the constitutional changes we've had recently. They get pushed through with 50, just a little over 50%, and it becomes law. And the people that push for that go back to whatever state they came from collecting the signatures. But we are left living under that. And there's no wiggle room for looking out for the minorities. It's now the law based on 50% of the vote.
I recall that. That's in the Federalist Papers. I don't know whether it's in 10, but this one was by the treasurer, or Madison.
Alexander Hamilton?
Alexander Hamilton. I think that's the one who mentioned that in the Federalist Papers. Thank you. Great response. Now here's one from Emily. This is quite an enduring question, a long one. Former President Trump invaded areas of the Black community that had been previously believed to be reserved for Black Americans, Democrats, and independents, such as churches, barbershops, and fast food restaurants. Do you see this as a moment that could bring Black Americans into the mainstream and change the character of the culture?
There's a lot to be said on how that was done. I mean, you have to go to the people. You have to be relatable. I've never met Donald Trump. I hear that when you meet him, that he's a likable person, and the persona of that gruff New Yorker is a stage persona. I would have no idea, but to be relatable and let people know that, you would have to get with the people. You couldn't be, hiding someplace and doing this just by sending out, clips of social media. You actually have to be out there and press the flesh.
Yeah.
And I think he's been good at that. So that obviously works for him. Other people don't have that much of a personality, and so it doesn't work as well for them.
Well, thank you. I'll move on to the next one. This is from Rudy. How should we talk about race? Now, some critics say that it is a subject best left alone. Do you realistically respond to someone who says they do not see race? How do you respond to
Obviously, you'd like to be colorblind for a lot of things, but it doesn't matter just race. There's personalities that some people just get put off by. There's, you know, what type of car you drive might irritate somebody else. I mean, there's a lot of things that are we're not all the same person, but we are very blessed to have all been created in the image of God. So we all have that basic, you know, need for respect for ourselves, and understand that we should have respect for others. So understanding race is a difficult thing unless somebody's trying to push it for their own gain.
And I look at it this way. Um, everything that we learn comes through the five senses. There's nothing that we learn any other way except when the eyes see someone, it automatically characterizes them. You have nothing to say about it. The psychic
Right.
has nothing to say about it. But those eyes will say, that person, I believe, is a Black person. And that person is a white, that's a Jew, and that's a so on and so forth. This is how we learn. Learning comes through no other means except that. Thank you. How do you respond to that?
So this is going to be a little different
Okay.
response. So when I was a manager of security companies,
Okay.
and I had security officers, I had some security officers that thought if they just wore their uniform properly and they looked like the buffest guy out there, that they were just automatically going to get respect. Well, that may get a person to come and approach you, because if you're sloppy and untucked and not looking like a professional, they're not even going to think there's a security officer there. So you had to have an image so that you're approachable. Once that hurdle is crossed, you better be able to perform.
Oh, what a great response.
So you need to be able to answer their question, take care of their needs, do it quickly, whatever it needed to be done. So an ounce of image is worth a pound of performance is one of my most hated metaphors. But if you don't have that approachable and somebody to approach you, you can never perform then to answer their questions.
Someone watching the show will remember what you just said about image. Here's a person, Ian, says, please define civility and why is it important in a free and democratic society?
If you immediately come back angry at somebody, you're not going to get anywhere. If I walk into a building at the same time somebody else does, I hold the door for them. I don't, it's whatever person's there. I don't care what political party, I don't care what, I hold the door for them. That's civility. If you had just treat people as you would like to be treated, the golden rule, it's amazing how the conversations can start, and you can talk about things without ever covering politics or anything that divides you. It's just, like you sit next to someone in an airplane, just being polite. It's civility goes a long way in opening doors and just making that contact and relationships.
You would fit well into this community. We welcome you.
Well, I'm just across the road at Center Road. That's where my district is. So
okay. Now here's a question from Alexis. We're getting closer to home and the job that you should be doing. What are the three most important issues in your district today, according to a survey you might have taken? Are these issues likely to be similar to those that Black Americans also face?
Sure, because right now, one of the biggest things with inflationary costs, with the costs that arose after COVID, with people not having jobs and stuff, and trying to get back into the workforce, and the supply chains being interrupted and things being more expensive, costs for everybody is a concern. Do we make this payment versus that payment? Do we have enough to get away for a weekend, or treat somebody for a birthday treat outside the house? These things are real to people. People that live in ivory towers and kind of $4 gas and you know um, the price of the grocery store don't matter to them because they have somebody deliver it for them. They don't realize that the decisions that everyday people have to make, medical costs, prescription costs. So those are, I guess, the economy is probably number one thing. Number two thing that I hear about a lot is just the opportunity for job placement. Um, Goes to training and education. It's a big picture for that. So I've been pushing skilled trades, for example, versus just a college education. So that somebody can have a career and not have to jump from one thing to another just to make ends meet. They can have an actual career. That's a big thing. I think that people want that comfort that's going to be there for the future. And I also think right now we've been talking, kind of mentioned, race type issues, but I think people are put off right now that the thing that's not talked about that much is the transgenderism right now. I get this a lot at the doors. Parents don't want their daughters having to compete against a boy, not only for potential injury, but because they may take the scholarship that was designed under Title IX for the girl to get, and they were hoping for that scholarship. Um, that's been an issue this election, and I never thought it was going to come up. I got laughed at one time when I said Genesee County doesn't want boys in girls' locker room. I got laughed at. They never thought it was going to happen. So these issues are in our community right now, and I think safety in schools is up there also. And
Well, this transitions us into the next question. Now, this is from Ross. How should Republicans address abortions? Since the right to life is a staple in the platform of the Republican Party, is there a way to find compromise in a country that's divided by gender and the lack of civility?
civility does come into this question a lot. Freedom of speech. So I am pro-life. I mean, I just happen to believe that we're creating an image of God. God wonderfully knit us in the womb. I just believe that it's a human being. So that's where that's where my convictions come from. Now, I also have to support the law and the Constitution. The state of Michigan allows abortion. We passed a Constitution for that. But I have a hard time when you talk about civility, is when I am yelled at and screamed at and called a fascist for wanting to save a life and looked at like I'm the devil, when that same person has no problem with somebody just at the moment of birth having abortion. No barriers to abortions. That's what they keep saying in Michigan. No barriers. Well, at what point do we consider that a baby? At what point do we look at somebody else? Why don't they get treated like they're the evil incarnate for wanting to kill something that's just ready to be born? And yet me wanting to save the life is the one that's actually targeted as the evil person. It really confuses me.
Well, you support the protections of women for health reasons and stuff like that. You will remain, are you saying, your right to life?
So, there's all kinds of things I've seen in ads this campaign period. I had to go out of state to have this procedure or whatever because I couldn't get it. All of them are false. All of them. If they took the pill that creates the abortion and it had a problem medically because now they have a fetus that died inside of them, and it had to be extracted, that's a medical procedure at that point. There's nowhere, anywhere in the United States that says you can't do that. But they make it sound like we're against that. And talk to a doctor. Don't talk to another politician.
This is the side of the discussion that I want to hear more about. I want to hear, because I think that killing of babies, nobody want to kill babies. Not even the people who believe this. I don't think that they want to. There's an argument that somehow we're not seeing, because that's part of our culture. We don't kill for the sake of killing.
And I do believe firmly that the proposal 3 that passed the last election, and um, people were taught and told that they're going to destroy Roe v. Wade. So everything that happened since the 1970s would happen again, as far as the states being able to make their decisions. The state of Michigan would have followed the same rules they had before. Um, it would not have barred. They just thought they were going to get the decision back. They did not think they're going to get no barriers for abortions. They didn't think they're going to get things where it said a health professional can perform an abortion. Doesn't say a doctor in most cases. We had to really work hard to make sure, and and you're called evil for any restriction or barrier. And it's like, I don't want a massage therapist, a licensed massage therapist, to perform an abortion. They're a healthcare provider, and that's what the law was going to say.
I hope people will take the point that you bring, as a source of discussion for renewed looking at the issue to find out where the truth are and what we're trying to achieve uh, from both sides of the issue to bring about a resolution that we can all live with. Now,
Henry, I go back to the Brookings Institute. I firmly believe if we have nuclear family, mother, father, children, providing for the health and welfare of their children, and loving environment, we would not have a lot of crime. We would not have a lot of disease. We would not have a lot of internal strife. Our mental health issues would be a lot lighter. I truly believe that if we could do that, wave a magic wand and have a mother, father, and loving children in the same household, and I don't, and it's hard to do.
Thank you for that great discussion on that issue, because that's very important to the audience here that's watching the show. And I have two questions I hope I can get through before our time is exhausted. We may have to foreshorten them. This is from James. Out of the 25 industrial nations in the world, the United States is ranked 15th behind Singapore, North Korea, India, Japan, Germany. If this is true, then what should the United States be doing to reestablish dominance in education, and also that Black Americans could benefit?
So education, first of all, I think we'd automatically raise our standing among industrial nations, income wise, success wise, having businesses, which would go to education also, if we just used our energy. If we became energy independent, we're able to sell our energy to Europe, for example, we'd be a very, very rich nation. Education without, um, I'll say, a learning process. So you can learn to do a job, but how do you then improve on that? Where do you learn innovation? Where do you learn how to be a manager and get along with other people? You can learn rote in a book, but what education is missing right now is rhetoric, logic. I mean, if you don't like what's happening in the classroom, you have a crying room to go to. It's like, how are you going to face a disgruntled employee when you're the boss? How are you going to work with other employees and teamwork to get something done? So I think education just wrote out of a book is not working well for America. I think you need to have discussions, debate, in a organized way. I mean, I remember having a debate class where I had to debate something that I didn't believe in, and I had to take the side to promote it. You learn a lot.
Yes, you do.
So
And
we don't do that very much.
this is what this show is intended to help to bring about by having you on here and me ask the questions from people from the Black community to find out where we can come together and work these issues out.
One other thing that I know, first of all, there's several things under this. I don't know where Johnny all of a sudden became the expert and not the teacher. My Johnny would never do that. Well, why aren't you taking the teacher's word for it? That drives me a little crazy too. But I also think that just our structure of knowing that going to school is like having a job. Just because you're not getting paid, you're learning how to do it. Your teacher's your supervisor, your principal's your manager. You're learning that structure so you can be productive in society. But we coddle everybody. You know, you're not learning in school like you would be in business. And I think they need to be more like that so that they know how to, when you go into business, you're not shocked at how a manager reacts to you because you're late. You know, I just think education, people are craving for discipline, in my opinion. And I say this because when I worked with cadets in Silver Patrol, um, boy, they just ate it up when when they were proud of their uniform. They could do their marching movements correctly. They could answer the questions for the discipline they were in for whatever training track they were in. They took pride in that, and they craved it. They weren't getting it anyplace else. They went to Silver Patrol. They might go to Boy Scout, something else like this. They get that structure. They're just lacking the structure. I think they actually need it.
Well, it's difficult to bring discipline the way it was done years ago because kids have rights under the Constitution. So,
Okay, I,
oh,
let's step back 1 second from that.
thank you.
Children, all human beings have the right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, as our founding document said, which led to the Constitution to protect those types of things. The parents are the protector of their children's rights. That's where it's lacking. The children themselves do not have the cognitive ability to make a decision of those levels. They just want the candy. You know, they to make that decision it's the parents protect their constitutional rights for their children. That's what parents are for. And then when they become the children become 18, cognitively developed into their 20s, and they make decisions where they can get married, they can purchase things, they can enter contracts. That's when they have to then take the responsibility for their constitutional protection.
You know, parents are somewhat uh, not focused on the issues that teachers have in the classroom. Consider the cell phone, for example. All kids have cell phones, and it's been proven worldwide that cell phones is an impediment to increase student performance. And yet, uh, parents will say they want the kids to have cell phones in the classroom. How do you reconcile this situation so that we can improve the quality of education that kids are getting in the classroom?
So I do know there are cell phone bills for the classroom in the House. Representative Mark Tisdale, for example, I know has one, and it talks about banning them in elementary school. At least maybe a parent that is personal property, so you come at constitutional private property. But maybe the children get it. They have to turn it in when they come to school, get it back when they leave school. They have it to call their parents on the bus or whatever. But then during middle school, they get a little more access to it. And in high school, they can have it, just can't have it out in the classroom. Can never have it out in the classroom. They can have it, but never out in the classroom. They can walk down the hallway, whatever. So that's a maturing discipline thing also. So I think we've recognized that. I think cyberbullying is part of that. But yeah, because the technology exists, it is great for a parent to get a hold of their children. But at what point do they interfere with the education process?
Yes, I hope that you will continue to work on that so that we can reestablish dominance in education because that will be the future. And many of our kids depend on being relevant in the future, to have a good education, to help solve problems, to find a life that's stable, secure, and comfortable for themselves.
That's spoken just like a long-term school board member.
Thank you. Here's a question. Now, this question is, do you believe that the 2024 election will cause a dissolution of the republic, irrespective of who wins? Explain your answer.
So I'm not going to do anything, winning or losing, any different than I would live my life normally. So you'd have to ask somebody that would. So in 2016, how many windows were smashed in Washington, D.C.? How many cars were set on fire in Washington, D.C. during the inaugural parade? Why did that happen? It wasn't because the evil Republicans won an election. I mean, why did that happen? It wasn't there was no. uh, They always look at it as if I'm sorry, just speaking as partisan as a Republican, that we are evil for some reason. I don't get it. Um, but we're not the ones that burned Minnesota during the BLM and some of the arrests that were made. We weren't the ones that caused riots down outside of St. Louis. We weren't the ones that shut down and cordoned off and created a new government area in Seattle. These are not Republican things that burned down Madison, Wisconsin, and so forth. So I don't know why we get the reputation that if we were to lose, that you know, or if we were to win, we're going to throw people in a gulag. Where does that talk come from? It doesn't come from our side. Somebody else is laying that on us as if what is it because that's what you would do, so you would put it on us that's what we would do? Is it like looking in the mirror? I'm very confused on those issues because I don't think there's any place in America for that to happen, and I think it's. I really think, why does a town tear itself apart after they win the World Series? These are societal questions. They're not governmental questions. These are what's our churches doing? What's our parents doing? These are societal questions.
Now, this is my response to that, but I'll be less defensive. I would be authoritative, and I will state what I mean and mean what I say. Do you believe that we would have a dissolution of government with all of this doom stuff? No, absolutely not. I was born American, and no matter who wins this election, I will be as American as apple pie, Chevrolet, and cornbread. Okay, and it's always been that way for me. We have checks and balances to make sure, and you talked about those for the protection of the minority. Remember that?
Yep.
Okay. I feel very firmly that we're in a stable situation, and all of this stuff that they're ranting and raving about on TV, I don't believe it. I don't listen to it. I believe that the founding fathers put together a government that was better than we could even imagine. We couldn't do that today. What this government, how stable this government is today, I'm sitting here, the descendant of a former slave, perhaps, but I'm free because it was in the Constitution. The founding fathers knew that they were up a creek, and they tried to solve that as quickly as they could. Even Jefferson. So I believe that we're stable. I think we're the benefactors of a great institution. And we will be the same January 1st as we are today.
If you read, I'm sure you have, Frederick Douglass did a lot for this country.
Yes.
And he was horribly beaten as a slave by Christian Bible school teachers, owners that didn't practice what they preached, obviously. So we survived that horrible times. We survived the riots of the late 60s. I think the 24-hour news cycle, trying to grab the headlines, is one of the biggest problems we have, because they got to be more sensational, and people are just stuck to the streaming, the screen on their TV, on their phone, on their TV, and they're just inundated with it all the time. And it's the headline grabbers. But if you just go out and have a barbecue with your neighbors, that's not the real world. That's not what you're living in. I go to the grocery store all the time. I'm not going in with an armed guard at my grocery store and things like that. It's not the norm in the U.S. I can travel from here to Florida and just drive. Nobody's stopping me and asking me for papers or what's my purpose of being here. This is a great country. So when you get out in the real world and just interact with people, it's not the news headlines. It's the sensationalism on the media, and the people are trying to make themselves what do they call influencer? I think that's stirring the pot. They're just trying to make headlines.
Dave, this is a philosophical question that just popped into the head. But Why is it in the old days, the philosophers who helped us define reality and the truth, they tried to separate and aspire to what was the best that we could be, what we could become. If you go back to Socrates, for example, he searched for the truth, and so did the others that came along with him. They searched for the truth, and by asking questions, and they found out that the people who were who were interested in the truth also, they couldn't answer the questions. So the search for the truth is an evasive thing. And I just wonder why people are so different today. We don't try to push what's possible so that we aspire to the best in us, but we laugh and we criticize and we beat up on people with the worst in them. How do you respond to that?
So, and I look at the way I approach issues, and I have my own philosophies and philosophers that I take things from. A lot of them modern. J.R. Tolkien, G.K. Chesterton, um, C.S. Lewis, modern philosophers. What I have decided in my own life, in my governing, is I am not a fan of the greater good, somebody's definition of what's greater. I want to support the common good. What I'm doing is going to benefit all of society, not harm them. The greater good can harm somebody because they're trying to push their specific goal at the expense of somebody else's. But the common good is going to elevate everybody.
Okay, I want to move quickly to another question that I have. What are three issues that your district is really thinks is critical, and what steps have you taken to convince them that you're on the right track?
So a lot of it just deals with money in some sort. Infrastructure, extremely expensive to fix roads, sewers, things like that, and make it efficient. But then again, it also attracts business. So if we spend money there and we make our what the government is supposed to do um, better, then we can make our communities better. Also, we need to look at just the opportunities. Make sure that there's enough opportunities for everybody and not um, trying to pick and choose winners and losers. We need to let entrepreneurs grow and encourage them. We need to make sure that people want to stay here because of the tax base and so forth. So, fighting for lower taxes, fighting for less government, fighting for the infrastructure that's the main job of government is, I think, is what the district's looking for.
Well, we're getting close to the end, Representative Dave, but I want to give you a chance to summarize to African Americans who have an interest in having you come back again and share with us your thoughts and your support and stuff like that. Would you summarize what you would say to them?
So I look at it as a whole family thing, a whole generational thing. I want to make it better for people down the line when after I'm gone. I have grandchildren. Some of my grandchildren, we didn't talk about this, but if you were to describe my grandchildren, if you had to describe them to a lost child, you would describe them as African American. Their family is mixed race. I want them to be able to succeed and do these things that I've been able to do, and I have by the grace of God, I sit here. I mean, I military career, but then I went through recession and so forth. I went from job to job just to make it, so I didn't have to leave the state. And then my career took off again. I want those opportunities available for everybody, and not just, I mean, on your own merit. I don't want to just be only for certain people. So I think we can do that.
Well, look, thank you, Dave. I mean, Representative Robinson. Or should I call you
Martin?
Martin? Should I call you
That's the other
Sergeant Dave?
Sergeant Dave is
Sergeant Dave.
I use that handle
It
a
looks
lot.
as though the time has come to summarize your views, which you've already done. Perhaps the audience would like to have you back again, and that I look forward to because you've been a great guest from which we've learned so much and we've shared so much and exchanged so much that the future will be brighter for the people who have been part of this audience. Thank you so much.
How we work as a community.
With that, this is Henry Hatter of the In My Opinion show saying goodbye until next time.